with Sterling. We brought him back, and he's come through our youth group. And so he's been here since he was whatever. And he may or may not have been a hellraiser in youth, but now I said, we would come back. He's come back from college. He's matured. And when I said, I want you to take over the youth, what's the first thing he does? He forms a team. And he puts his team together. They're meeting every week. How many of you got that email with that on it? Anybody? Okay. All right. Anybody not get it? Okay. Could you, on the tear out part of that bulletin, would you put your name and email, and we'll get you on there, because I'm starting to communicate more and more online. And if you're not getting the online stuff, it's so much easier, and we're going to be doing more videos and communicating that way. So that was one of the communications that went out. And Lena, of course, has come up through our youth group. What a surprise that she would be a party organizer. But between the two of them, they're taking on, and the team that they built. I think it was last week we showed the picture of the team. I think there was eight? Yeah. And so the youth is moving ahead, and on the 16th of June is the kickoff. So welcome to you in here in the church, and welcome to you online. It's good to have you. And this morning, we are looking at how to get the best out of bad times. And we've just been through the pandemic. We're coming out the other side. And what is it? All that pain with no gain would be a shame. So we are going to look at what of value do we take away from this? What did we learn? How can we make life better because of what we've been through? The saying, the axiom that I have used quite a bit is, through a crisis, you either get better or you get bitter. It's just that simple. You either get better or you get bitter. As a community this morning, there's a fair amount of teaching. Now, usually I print out a book of scripture that go with it. Most of this you will recognize. We've been talking about it for months, the financial section, the relational section, all the rest of the stuff. And so I didn't put it in there because you guys have it all memorized. And but you'll recognize where I'm drawing from as I do it. We, as followers of Jesus Christ, need to be the salt of the earth. And as we get through this, that means that when the rest of the world is stressed, we need to be at peace. What is it, Rudyard Kipling? And when you can keep your head when all around are losing theirs, you'll be a man, my son. It is the Christian of Jesus Christ, the follower of Jesus Christ, who has to be calm in the middle of turmoil because Jesus Christ is in control. We didn't lose control here. We're still following God, and He is still in our life and in charge of circumstances. So as we move through this and come out the other side, how do we come out wiser? And a very interesting thing, Linda was showing me this. It was a girl who was on America's Got Talent. And they were saying, talking to her afterwards, and she has cancer. And he said, well, they say that I have a 2% chance of living. And of course, jaw fell on the floor and everybody's going, whoa. Well, she says, actually, that's better than no chance. And her attitude was just freaking me out, blowing me away. How she could pick the best out of a very bad situation. Now, we haven't gone through anything like that. And I'll tell you just about a minute afterwards when she's done here, but she wrote a song. She's got America's Got Talent, and this is a little clip here.
I have not been working for quite a few years. I've been dealing with cancer.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right.
Can I ask you a question? How are you now?
Last time I checked, I had some cancer in my lungs, my spine, and my liver.
Wow.
So you're not okay?
Well, not in every way, no.
You got a beautiful smile and a beautiful glow, and nobody would know.
Thank you. It's important that everyone knows I'm so much more than the bad things that happened to me.
There was something about that song after the way you just almost casually told us what you're going through, and
You can't wait until life isn't hard anymore before you decide to be happy.
Yeah. You can get bitter or you can get better. It's just that simple. She used this as an opportunity to wrestle the big issues of life. She had to wrestle with God, and she had to wrestle with priorities, and she had to wrestle with a lot of things. So this painful experience in her life actually produced spiritual values, wisdom, and, in a way, surprisingly, security about her future. James says, when all kinds of trials and temptations crowd into your lives, my brothers, welcome them as don't resent them as intruders, but welcome them as friends and realize they've come to produce in you a quality of endurance. And let the process go on, and you will find that you have become mature with no weak spots. Trials and temptations and testing is for the purpose of strengthening our character and our integrity. As we move away from this pandemic, we learned a lot about it. And we hopefully, as we go through this, learn a lot about ourselves too. So that we come out of this not with just a little interrupted life spot, but we come out of this with a database of knowledge and understanding of life better than we went into it with. I learned a lot. I learned that the Mad Max producers don't have it right. They said there was going to be a shortage of oil when the end of time, when things run out, but it's not going to be oil we're short of. What's it going to be? We run out of toilet paper, yes. And so they were kind of a little off on that. And I got thinking that historians got reading about this event in the future, and they look back, they're going to believe that this was a diarrhea pandemic, but it wasn't. It was a virus which wreaked a lot of havoc around the world. Now, in light of what we've experienced and in light of what we learned, it would be a shame to just go back to normal. If we aspire to normal, that's not very inspirational. So where is it we're going to come out of this that helps us with the rest of our life have a better future than we had coming into it? Now, we in sports, we had a saying which was, no pain, no gain. In other words, if you don't push it until you feel it, you're not going to get a result. You're not going to get stronger. You're not going to get faster. No pain, no gain. But I also think that you could say, pain without gain is a shame. And so this morning, a lot of people had varying degrees of pain. Some people lost loved ones. Some people, it hardly affected at all. And some people, it actually wasn't too bad. But moving away from this, what do we gain? Because to go through something and not gain anything is a shame. So this morning, the question is, how can I be better because of what I have just experienced? And I think the temptation is, I'm so sick of this, I'm over it, I don't want to hear any more about it. But here it is that we should not waste any of our experiences in life. Some of them are learning what to do, and some are learning, don't do that again. But still, each experience can make us wiser if we choose to reflect back on it. C.S. Lewis, you may know him, Screw Tape Letters, Mere Christianity, and was writing during the Second World War. He was talking about how to profit from bad experience. Now, he wrote in his book called The Problem of Pain, my own experience is something like this. I am progressing along the path of life in my own ordinary, contented, fallen and godless condition, absorbed in a merry meeting with my friends for the morrow, or a bit of work that trickles my vanity, when suddenly a stab of abdominal pain that threatens serious disease, or perhaps a headline in tomorrow's newspaper that threatens all of us with destruction and sends this whole pack of cards tumbling down. At first, I was overwhelmed by my own little hapless look at the broken toys of my life, and suddenly, slowly and reluctantly, bit by bit, I tried to bring myself into the frame of mind that I should be at all times. Perhaps by God's grace, I succeed for a day or two. Isn't that our experience? And for a day or two, I became a creature consciously dependent on God and drawing in strength from the right source. But the moment the threat is withdrawn, now this is the part that we've all experienced. We've had, in his case, it was a physical scare. The doctor takes you in, you don't change your lifestyle. You don't get a little cholesterol out of your diet, or if you don't get some exercise, or if you don't stop drinking, you're going to fry your liver or whatever. And he says, you need to change your lifestyle. And sure enough, we make a really good change for a while. But as soon as we move away from the threat, sometimes, in a relationship, spouse will say, if you don't, look, you're not in the marriage, and if you don't get in it, I'm getting out of it. And it will open your eyes, and for a while, you will be a better husband, a better wife, more attentive to the kids and stuff like that. But you move away from what it was that opened your eyes and drew you into a thought process about what you just learned out of a difficult time. Whether it's relationship and marriage, whether it's financial, all of those things. So let's not move away too quickly before we make note of what we can take out of the past to make us wiser in the future. So back to C.S. Lewis. But the moment the threat is withdrawn, my whole nature leads me back to the toys. God has had me for about 48 hours. And then only because of taking everything else away from me, but let him sheath the sword for a moment, and this is what we need to avoid. Let him take away the threat, and the sword for a moment, and I behave like a puppy. That when the hated bath is over, I shake myself off, dry as I can, I race off and I reacquire my comfortable dirtiness, either in the nearest manure pile or at least a flower bed. This is a thing that's true of all of us, that human nature to return to bad habits once the pain associated with those bad habits is gone. In other words, it's human nature to want to get back to whatever normal was. And this abnormal experience will let us create a new normal going forward. It has changed a lot of the way we shop. We had to do more online. It's changed the way we do church. And it's the way we work. More people are working at home and stayed that way. The new normal is going to be different. But how about the new normal for our lives? What changes can we learn about from having gone through this? And I would like to go through about 3 of the areas where we may be able to make an assessment and come out wiser. How can we be better because of the bad experience? So 3 areas that we could look at that we could use as an opportunity. Now, the first one is the financial area. How can I get better financially? We need to be taking the financial peace class, which is the teachings of our owner's manual on how to live life properly financially. And we've talked about this before, that the Christ followers who were secure financially, when we went through the 2018, when was that thing? Whenever. You could buy $1 million house for $300,000. If you were financially secure, if you followed the teachings of the owner's manual, if you had your financial house in order, it was not a time to go broke, it was a time to prosper. Right now, you can buy a $300,000 house for about $450,000. But the point is that all of this is taught in here, and we've gone over it, we've had books, but let's look at the financial learning that we can have from this. Now, a lot of people either got cut back on work or got let go from work for a while, and here's the challenge. There's a couple of financial realities that we have to face. We were taught, and you've heard this before, how many have heard that they need to have at least 3 months to 6 months cash reserves in account? Yeah, we all know that. I'm not going to ask how many did it. I'm just going to ask how many heard it. Now, the fact that this came up, and for many people, it put them into a financial crisis, this may be an excellent time to do what you know we should be doing. And that is to spend less than we make. And that has nothing to do with how much you make. Savings has nothing to do with how much you earn. Savings is a formula of spending less. In China, 90% of the people, you don't want to live off their wages, but 90% of them are saving large percentages of their income. They don't make near as much as you do, and yet they're able to save for the future. Why? They're kind of used to instability. But I got news for you. This isn't our last financial crisis. And the last one wasn't the last. There's another one coming. And if you live long enough, there'll be another one after that. That's why the owner's manual is so specific on how to arrange your finances. If you've been alive long enough, well, I'm quite young, so I remember one or two, but my memory goes back to President Reagan and the 11% and inflation stop, and he fired all the traffic controllers. These things just keep coming and coming and coming, but the next one, we need to be prepared because we learned from the last one. We don't need to get blindsided again. It's coming, don't act, who knew? Everybody knew. Now, the lesson to take away from this is it is better to want than to owe. It's better to want something than to buy it and to owe. We go into a financial downturn, and we've got all the desires of our heart because we borrowed money. Ease off on the finances, now you got to pay for it. You purchased it in this climate, but you're paying for it in this economic climate, and that is not a formula for success. So it is better to just want something than to borrow and buy it and have to deal with the consequences later. Either way, there's tension. If you want it, there's tension. But if you buy it and borrow, there's tension. You need to pay attention to the tension. So, as Christians, we don't want to be in the place where we have consumable debt for consumables. And so we can weather pretty severe storms because we follow the teachings of Jesus Christ. And now back to what we said when we started, and that is that you can be at peace in the middle of a storm because your life is ordered around the teachings of Jesus Christ. So the storms are going to come, and there's more coming. If you haven't been through a crisis, there's one just over there with your name on it, and it's coming. But you don't need to sweat it. You just need to live the way we were taught to live. Another thing in the area of financial is, did we find ourselves in a financial hole? Financial holes come from those periods of life when we've borrowed, or we have not saved, or things start to come due, and we find ourselves in a financial hole. Financial holes come from lack of self-control. Self-control is, if you lose self-control, you lose control of your life, lose control of everything. I mean, Solomon was gathering wisdom literature, and he wrote it down. Some of it he did himself, but some of it he just collected. But if you look at, he says that a person who loses self-control goes to a financial hole. He says it's like a city whose walls are broken through. A person who lacks self-control is a person like a city that the walls have broken down. Now, to us, it might not really be a clear graphic, but to them, a city had a wall around it. It was for security, for protection. They could prosper in there. And when an enemy came against you, they would find the weakest spot in the wall, and then they bring siege equipment up, and they would tear down a spot in the wall, and then the enemy would come flooding in, and you would be taken captive. He says that if you lose self-control, it's like having your walls torn down so that you are vulnerable to a whole host of difficulties. We may be in the place where we say, I wish I'd saved more money, or I wish I hadn't borrowed that, or those things usually come from, not always, usually come from a lack of self-control. Now, I'll tell you one of the things that is not helpful, and that is to blame the pandemic, or to blame your boss, or to blame your job. They were contributing factors, and I'm not saying they weren't. But it's the same thing with all the bad decisions that were made in your life. You were there when they were made. You were there when you made your own bad decisions. And one of the reasons we get into these tight spots is because of lack of self-control. And we, ourselves, are one of the biggest contributing factors. But those who follow Jesus Christ can ride over those turbulent times. Are you tracking with me? The reason our life is so hard is because we are following the teachings of a culture. And it's not that you haven't heard this before every Sunday for 20 years, but this culture was designed by somebody, Jesus said, is the prince of the power of the air. He's the prince over this culture, and he designed a culture dealing with finances, relationships, sex, everything that business, morals, ethics, all of it is designed to give you a hard time and keep you from enjoying the abundant life and peace that passes understanding that's offered by Jesus Christ. And so if you buy into this culture, which was designed by the prince of the power of the air, it's designed to stress you, it's designed to fatigue you, it's designed to keep you from having a strong spiritual relationship to God your Father. It's designed to rob you of life. And so if you follow the teachings of this culture, then you will experience the pain of this culture. If you follow Jesus Christ, you will ride over a crisis and you will be strength for those who are in turmoil because you have exercised self-control. Financial peace is that course that we should all take to understand God wants you tomorrow morning to go to the mailbox and there's not a debt payment in there. You are free. And you're deciding on which end of the donkey you want to be. So, you want to be the head, not the other end, and that has to do with debt. Okay, now, when I say you could be in a financial position that's stressed because of this, and I'm saying two things. Number one is because you followed the teachings of this culture, not the followings of Jesus Christ. And the second thing is, don't blame the circumstances. Rather, it's a reminder to start to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ so that the next time, and there will be another one, the next time you don't have the same stress. You just go through it more easily. All right. Now, the other thing is, what did you learn relationally? Now, being together is really a good thing to a point. If you were together long enough during this thing, you also found there may have been the odd crack in your relationship. And you were so busy before you could ignore it. But if you got slowed down, the cracks started to appear. And what is that? It's nothing big. It's just you were so busy you didn't attend to it. Now you have the time to attend to the cracks in the relationships, whether it's spouse, children, work, neighborhood. You have the time to attend to what showed up when you had a chance to slow down. I really enjoyed, especially the first parts of this, where you had to stay in your house. I got to read. I'm burning through a couple books a week. I'm just enjoying myself. I'm being alone. And what did I learn? I learned that my life can be richer if I slow down and spend more time with God and His Word. Now what do I want to do? Pick the pace back up and forget that I learned how nice it is to sit on my lanai and talk to God? No, I have to keep what I learned in my life going forward. You tracking with me? So what did you learn? Relationships, I learned if I spend more time with God, I have more fun, enjoy God, and my life goes better. If this showed cracks in the relationships of your kids, your spouse, your neighborhood, your work, just address it, own your piece of the pie, piece of the conflict, and address it. God is all the time wanting us to get better and to never get bitter. So look back, find out the better. So actually, something like this pandemic, the great toilet paper shortage, could be the catalyst for giving you a better marriage. It doesn't have to destroy your marriage. It can give you a better marriage. And so time together can be a good thing, and it also can show the stresses. In fact, Linda said that I could retire any time that I wanted to. But I had to leave the house at 8, and I could not come back till 5. She was not having me pace around the house looking for stuff to do while she was trying to do stuff. Relationships are good. Just leave the house at 8. Did you come out wiser in the relationships? And one of the things we're finding out is we don't learn enough as we could because we move too fast and we don't have time to process. Or for my Canadian friends, you haven't had time to process all of this. So this is your processing time. So God can teach you, God can talk to you, God can remind you of the things He's put in His owner's manual that will make your life better. Last thing, number 3 that we want to look at, and you need to be intentional in all of this. By the way, if you have stress in a relationship, relationships don't get better on their own. Just thought I'd share that. But here, how is your worldview holding up? How is the way you understand the world? When stresses came, did your understanding of the world hold solid? I know that a lot of people had to rethink through the political landscape of our nation last little while. Why? Because the way they saw it didn't hold up through it. And so they're saying, I wasn't expecting that to happen, or this shouldn't have happened. I'm not saying, I don't care which side of the fence you're on. I'm just saying, as they watched it, the way they understood it was being challenged. In any area of life, were you challenged in your worldview? Do you need to rethink through how the world operates and what that tension is? Pay attention to the tension. So you're watching this life unfold, you're watching circumstances unfold, and it's just not fitting into the neat little box that you drew for life. Pay attention to the tension. Why? You're about to learn something new. That's like an advanced notice. The tension is saying you're going to have to add to your understanding of life in order to understand life. You had some deficiencies. Now, if you were being guided and you have a proper worldview that wasn't shaken by what happened, that's good. But if you did have a worldview, well, I thought God, or why would God, and so what's going on here? If you had a faith and you're challenging some of the things you believed about God, then you need to work it through. You need to go to a small group. You need to figure out why this did not stay consistent with your view of God. Or if you don't have a faith in God and you're watching this unfold and you got tempted to reach for a Bible, which has been there for 30 years, but and you reached out to God, it tells you maybe that's something you should have been doing all along. After the crisis is over, you should pursue it. In 9/11, the churches could hardly hold the American population because it challenged their worldview, and all of a sudden they're saying, I better look at this God thing. And we plugged the churches. But again, as C.S. Lewis said, as time went on and the threat decreased, everybody went back to normal. Now, we will get back to normal, but it needs to be a new normal. This church will never be the same because of the way we communicate. We have to communicate more with videos and more with other stuff like that. We cannot not change. Any English teachers in here? As a math major. Okay, man. Okay, you cannot not change. So, we learned. But we need to be more effective in disciple making, building our faith, supporting one another in community. And I was at your small group there, and one of the things that really hit us was how much we missed being face-to-face and together in our community groups. And so what did we learn? We learned that it's important to be with friends. And by the way, people who live in community, people who have good relationships and have healthy social connections live longer. And they are sick less often. So if you're sick of your husband and you want to get rid of him, just don't let him have any friends. And you'll die in no time. Or if you like him, just keep him connected. There you go. In fact, people, this actually came out of a study of the Catholic Church, but people who go to church and have connections in church live significantly years longer. I think it's around 7 years longer. And so everything in this is there for your better life. So let's get really intentional about knowing what God taught and putting it into our life so that He can give us what Jesus wanted us to have, which was